What is up, Internet? This is Jam4077, and today I'm presenting you the updated versions of the decks that I used in my Duels with Duel Monster Era decks video. With all that said, let's start off with my A2Z deck. We have one copy of X-Head Cannon, two copies of Ojama Green, two copies of Ojama Yellow, and two copies of Ojama Black. Then we have two copies of Destrudo, the Lost Dragon's Fijorin. I'm probably not saying that right. Two copies of Union Hanger. Three copies of A Assault Core. Three copies of B Buster Drake. One copy of Y Dragon Head. One D Metal Tank. Three C Crushed Wyvern. And two copies of Ojama Blue. For spells, I have three copies of Ojama Assimilation. One Terraforming. One Fool's Burial. One Monster Reborn. And we have this card called Master Rules 2020 Revision. This basically allows you to play the upcoming new Master Rule 5 here on YGL Pro. At least until the people who made this update their systems. And you'll be seeing this card a lot in all the decks that I'm about to show here in this video. Then we have two copies of Called by the Grave, one copy of Double or Nothing, and three copies of Union Hanger. For traps, I have two Infinite Impermanence, one Metaverse, and one Solemn Judgment. For the side deck, which remains the same for most decks that I'm about to show you, if there's a change, I'll bring it up. So for the side deck, I have two copies of Nibiru, the Primal Being, one copy of Dire Wrestler Pankratops, one World Chalice Guard Dragon Armoduke, one Starry Venom Fusion Dragon, and one Mud Dragon of the Swamp. And we have two copies of Twin Twister, three Super Polymerization, two Evenly Match, one Red Reboot, and one Solemn Warning. For the extra deck, I have one copy of A to Z Dragon Buster Cannon, three copies of ABC Dragon Buster, and one copy of XYZ Dragon Cannon. For Synchros, I have one Black Rose Dragon. Then for Xyz, I have one number 39 Utopia and number 39 Utopia Double. For Lynx, I have one Boral Sword Dragon, one Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, one Nightmare Unicorn, one Nightmare Phoenix, one Platinum Gadget, and two copies of Union Carrier. And yeah, so that's it for my A to Z deck. Let's move on to the Bloodluster Soldier deck. Okay, for the next up profile I'm going to showcase you guys here is my Bakura deck. This is utilizing the new support from the Legendary Duelist 5. Yeah, it's a fifth one. As well as some Birdie Abyss and an Unchained card. Speaking of which, we have one Abominable Unchained Soul. Then we have one Archfiend Empress, two copies of Cursed Necrofear, two Dark Necrofear, one Seer Male Branch of the Burning Abyss. Then we have three copies of Dark Spirit of Banishment. Then we have three copies of Dark Spirit of Malice. Then we have two copies of Fiendish Rhino Warrior, one Gref, Male Branch of the Burning Abyss, two copies of Tour Guide of the Underworld, and three copies of Scrum, Male Branch of the Burning Abyss. For spells, we have three copies of Dark Spirit's Mastery. Then we have one Monster Reborn. Then we have Spirit Message L, I, N, and A. Using utilizing a custom artwork I did, which combines the OCG artwork with the lettering from the TCG. Then we have 3 copies of Dark Sanctuary. For traps, we have 2 Infinite Impermanence, 2 copies of Greypole, 2 copies of Sentence of Doom, 1 Destiny Board, and 1 Solemn Judgment. The side deck's about the same, so let's move on to the extra deck, where we have number 39, Hope Harbinger Dragon, Titanic Galaxy, 1 Dingirsu, the Orchestra of the Evening Star, number 90, Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord, 1 Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, and 2 copies of Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss. For links, we have 1 Borolo Dragon, 1 Borolo Sword Dragon, 1 Topologic Trisbenier, or Trisbenia. I don't know how you pronounce that. We got 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Master King Archfiend, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Wee Witch's Apprentice, and 1 copy of Cherubini, the Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss. So yeah, that's it for this deck profile, and let's move on to the next one, which should be Blackluster Soldier. Okay, here is my updated version of the Blackluster Soldier deck, which I had to update a lot. How I originally had it, I was getting my butt handed to me more times than I could count. So, with that said, let's get on to the deck profile. We have 2 copies of Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, 2 copies of Charging Gaia the Fierce Knight, 1 Lord Gaia the Fierce Knight, 2 copies of Incantation Talismandra, 1 Envoy of Chaos, 3 copies of Manju of the 10,000 Hands, 3 copies of Beginning Night, 2 copies of Evening Twilight Night, 2 copies of Incantation Candle, and 2 copies of Super Soldier Soul. Then we have 2 copies of the OG Blackluster Soldier. Then we have 3 copies of Blackluster Soldier Super Soldier to round up our monsters. Then for spells, we have 1 Reinforcing the Army, 2 copies of Pot of Desires, 2 copies of Pot of Extravagance, 1 Terraforming, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Super Soldier Ritual, 2 Super Soldier Synthesis, 1 Incantation Inception. Okay, I think that's how you pronounce it. And 3 copies of Gateway to Chaos. Then we have 1 Solemn Judgment. Side deck remains the same, so let's move on to the extra deck, where we have number 39, Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy, 1 Dingirsu, the Orcus of the Evening Star, I should say. My bad. 1 number 11 Big Eye, number 41 Babushka, the Terribly Tired Tapir, Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Saryuja Skull Dread, 2 copies of Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, Isolde, the two Tales of the Noble Knights, Nightmare Cerberus, Underclock Taker, and Link Karibo. So, yeah, that's it for my Blackluster Soldier deck, and let's move on to the Blue Eyes decks. Okay, here is my Blue Eyes deck, the Fusion variant. To start things off with, we have 3 copies of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon, 1 copy of Deepa Blue Eyes, 2 copies of Dragon Spirit of White, and 1 King of the Swamp. Then we have 2 copies of Ash Blossom Enjoys Spring. 3 copies, I should say, of the Whitestone of Agents, and 1 copy of the Whitestone of Legends, 1 Glow Up Bulb, 2 copies of Sage with Eyes of Blue, and 1 copy of Maiden with Eyes of Blue. For spells, I have 2 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords, 2 copies of Polymerization, using the artwork from the dub. Then we have 3 copies of Trade-In, 3 copies of Dragon Shrine, 3 copies of Melody of the Awakening Dragon, 1 Dragon's Mirror, 1 Monster Reborn, and 2 copies of Caught by the Grave. Then we have 2 copies of Waking the Dragon, and 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. Side deck is the same, so let's move on to the extra deck. We have 1 copy of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, 1 Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon, 1 Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. Next up, we have 1 copy of Burst of the Dragons. Then we have 1 Azure Eyes Silver Dragon, 1 Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, 1 Draco Berserker of Tenyi. Then we have 1 Black Rose Moonlight Dragon. For Xyz, we have 1 Ray Raptor Ultimate Falcon, 1 number 38 Hope Armature Dragon Titanic Galaxy, and 1 Girsu, the Orcus of the Evening Star. For links, we have 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Crystron Needle Fiber, and 1 Link Karibo. Now that that deck profile is done, let's move on to our Ritual variant for Blue Eyes. And we have 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon, 2 Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon, 2 copies of Depot Blue Eyes, 1 Dragon Spirit of White, 1 copy of World Legacy World Shield, 2 copies of Mech Knight Orcus Girsu. Then we have 3 copies of the Whitestone of Agents, 1 Whitestone of Legend, 3 copies of Sage with Eyes of Blue, 2 Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon, and 2 copies of Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon. For spells, we have 2 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords, 1 Trade, 3 copies of Trade-In, I should say, 3 copies of Melody of the Awakening Dragon, 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Bingo Machine Go, 2 copies of Chaos Form, and 2 copies of Advanced Ritual Art. Then we have 1 copy of World Legacy Guard Dragon, and then 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Then next up we have is 1 copy of Azure Eyes Silver Dragon, 1 Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, and 2 copies of Herald of the Arc Light. Then for Xyz, we have 1 Galaxy Eyes Cypher Blade Dragon, 1 Galaxy Eyes Full Armor Photon Dragon, 2 copies of Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon, number 38 Hope Armature Dragon Titanic Galaxy, and 1 Girsu, the Orcus of Evening Star, 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Cross Sheep, 1 Heroic Seal of Heavenly Spheres, 1 Guard Dragon Pisty, and 1 Guard Dragon LP. So yeah, those are my Blue Eyes decks. And next one should be the Dark Magician deck. Okay, here is my Dark Magician deck profile. Start out with 3 copies of the Dark Magician, 1 Red Eyes Black Dragon, 1 Paladinium Oracle Mahat, 1 Magician of Dark Illusion, 2 copies of Apprentice Illusion Magician, 1 copy of Dark Magician Girl, 1 Palladium Oracle Mana, 3 copies of Magician's Rod, 1 copy of Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, 3 copies of Magician's Souls, and 1 copy of Magician of Chaos. Then for spells, I have 2 copies of the Eye of Timaeus, 1 Dark Magic Attack, 1 Red Fusion, 2 copies of Spellbook of Knowledge, 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Monster Reborn, 3 copies of Soul Servant, 2 copies of Secrets of Dark Magic, 1 Illusion Magic, 3 copies of Dark Magical Circle. For traps, I have Magician Navigation, 3 Eternal Soul, and 1 Solemn Judgment. Side deck's the same, so let's move on to the extra deck, where we have 1 Dragon of Red Eyes, 1 Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight, 2 copies of Dark Magicians, 1 Dark Cavalry, and 1 Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight. For Xyz, we have number 11 Big Eye, 1 Ebon Illusion Magician, and 1 Magi the Magician Gal. Then we have 1 Bold Sword Dragon, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Wee Witch's Apprentice, 1 Plant Verte Anaconda, and 1 Link Karibo. So yeah, that's my Dark Magician deck. Next one should be the Destruction Sword deck. Okay, here is my Destruction Sword deck profile. I have 1 copy of Dark Magician, 1 Rise Black Dragon, 2 copies of Buster Blader, the Destruction Sword Master, 2 copies of Buster Blader, 2 copies of Robot Buster Destruction Sword, 2 copies of Wizard Buster Destruction Sword, 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, 3 copies of Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman, and 3 copies of Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, and then 3 copies of Tangy Spirit Adahira. I hope I'm saying that right. Then 1 Instant Fusion, 1 for 1, 1 Red Ice Fusion, 3 copies of Where Art Thou, 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Called by the Grave, and 1 Destruction Swordsman Fusion. Then for traps, I have 1 Infinite Permanence, 2 Destruction Sword Memories, 3 copies of Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman, 1 Trap Trick, and 1 Solemn Judgment. Side deck's the same, so let's move on to the extra deck, where we have 1 Dragon of Red Eyes, 1 Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and 1 Thousand Eyes Restrict. Then we have 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, and 2 copies of Buster Dragon. Then for links, we have 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 copy of Plant Rotate Anaconda, and 2 copies of Companion Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman, 1 Link Karibo, and 1 Solomon Gray Almiraj? I don't know how you say that, but yeah, that's my Buster Blader deck. And yeah, next one deck up should be the Exodia deck. Okay, here's my Exodia deck. Now, as you can see, this is not the variant that tries to win through Exodia's win condition. This is more trying to use almost every single Exodia support there is out there. Sometimes it works, sometimes, well, not so much. Let's start this off with the left arm, the right leg, the left leg, and the right arm of the Forbidden One. Then we have the legendary Exodia Incarnate. I have 2 copies of this card, 1 copy of Dino Wrestler Pankratops, one Exodia Necros. You don't really get out this card that often. However, you can use it for the effect of Obliterate here. So even if you can't get it out, you can still get some use out of it. 3 copies of Legion, the Fiend Gesture. Then we have 3 copies of Witch of the Black Forest. 1 Preplan Aris Scorpio. 1 Preplan Darling Cobra. 1 Exodia the Forbidden One. 3 Lone Fire Blossom. And 2 copies of Ash Blossom Enjoy Spring. For spells, I have 1 Magicalized Fusion. 2 Contract with Exodia, which can also be used in conjunction with Obliterate. Then we have 2 copies of Pot of Extravagance, because you're not going into your extra deck all that often. 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Future Fusion. Now, the ideal situation for this deck is to use this, get out your 5 pieces of Exodia into your graveyard, have this and this in your hand, and, well, Bob's your uncle. Again, doesn't always happen. Then we have 2 Infinite Impermanents, 2 copies of Gravehole, 1 Roll Revealing Light, 3 copies of Obliterate, 1 Skill Drain, and 1 Solemn Judgment. Now, with the inclusion of Pankratops in the main deck, there is a change to the side deck, in the form of Dark Ruler No More. Everything else other than this is the same in the side deck. For the extra deck, we have 2 copies of Quintet Magician, 1 number 11 Big Eye, number S39 Utopia the Lightning, 1 number 39 Utopia, number 41 Babushka the Heavily Tired Tapir, 1 Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, 1 Daigasso Emerald, the Phantom Knights of Break Sword. Then we have Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Decode Talker, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Wee Witch's Apprentice, and 2 copies of Link Karibo. So yeah, that's my Exodia deck, and next one should be the Magnet Warriors. Okay, here is my Magnet Warrior deck profile. We have 1 copy of Beta the Magnet Warrior, 1 copy of Gamma the Magnet Warrior, and 1 Alpha the Magnet Warrior. Then we have 1 Valkyrion the Magna Warrior. Then we have 3 copies of Berserkion the Electro Magna Warrior. Then we have 1 copy of Blood Dragon, 2 copies of Elemental Hero Prisma, 1 Delta the Magnet Warrior, then 3 copies of Alpha the Electromagnet Warrior, 3 copies of Beta the Electromagnet Warrior, and 3 copies of Gamma the Electromagnet Warrior. Then we have 1 copy of Doki Doki. Then we have 1 A Hero Lives, 3 copies of Polymerization, 1 Traden, 1 Terraforming, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Call by the Grave, 1 Magnetic Field, 2 copies of Catapult Zone, and 2 copies of Fusion Recycling Plant. Then for tracks, we have 2 Infinite Impermanents and 1 Solemn Judgment. Side deck's the standard variant, so we'll get into that. Let's move on to the extra deck with Imperion Magnum, the Superconductive Battlebot. Then we have Elemental Hero Gaia, 1 Gallant Granite. Then we have 1 number 41 Babushka, the Terribly Tired Tapir, 1 Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, 1 Daigasso Emerald, the Phantom Knights of Break Sword, and 2 copies of Gorgonic Gorian. Then we have 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Usa, the Earth Charmer Immovable, and 1 Mrs. Radiant. So yeah, that's my Magnet deck. Now let's get on to two variants on Cleforts. Okay, here's my Clefort variant that focuses on getting out two of the three Egyptian god cards. Now, when I originally built this deck, I did actually include give me a minute here, the Winged Dragon of Ra, but given how Cleforts have the restriction on special summoning, well, I decided it's best to leave it out and focus on the other two monsters. 3 copies of Clefort Monolith, 3 copies of Clefort Scout, 2 copies of Obelisk the Tormentor, and 2 copies of Slifer the Sky Dragon. Then we have 1 copy of Stealth, 2 copies of Clefort Shell, 3 copies of Clefort Disc, 3 copies of Clefort Helix, and 3 copies of Clefort Carrier. For spells, I have 2 copies of Lightning Storm, 2 copies of Summoner's Art, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 Called by the Grave, and 3 copies of Sacrifice. For traps, I have 1 copy of Mat Change. Basically help get your Cleforts from the top of your extra deck into your hand. Basically, that's what this card does. Then 1 copy of Vivid Impermanence, 2 copies of Lose 1 Turn, 1 Skill Drain, and 1 Solemn Judgment. The side deck is my standard variant, so let's move on to the extra deck, which contains only 3 copies of Clefort Genius. Again, the Clefort's pendulum effects on not being able to special summon other monsters out of the Cleforts really hinders your options for extra cards. Now, I do have one other variant that I want to show here, and this variant focuses more on getting out the Wicked God cards from the Yu-Gi-Oh! R manga. It's almost the same as the other deck, except for a couple of changes. Such as we have the Wicked Dreadroot, the Wicked Avatar, and the Wicked Eraser, and we have 1 extra copy of Clefort Stealth in here. And, one other change here is we also have Pot of Desires and the Monarch Stormforth. So, yeah. Those are my 2 Clefort variants. And, let's move on to our Red Eyes deck. Okay, here is my Red Eyes deck. Starts off with, I have 2 copies of Dark Magician, the red version. Then we have 3 copies of Red Eyes Black Dragon, 1 Summon Skull, 1 God Phoenix Gearfried, 2 copies of Red Eyes Alternative Black Dragon, 2 copies of Red Eyes Black Flare Dragon, 1 Neo Kaiser Glider, 2 copies of Gearfried the Red Eyes Iron Knight. Then we have 1 Red Eyes Baby Dragon, 3 copies of Black Metal Dragon, 2 copies of Rocket Synchron, and 3 copies of the Black Stone of Legend. For spells, I have 3 Red Eyes Fusion, 2 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords, 1 Magicalized Fusion, 1 copy of cards of the Red Stone, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Red Eyes Insight, and for traps, I have 2 copies of Infinite Permanence, 2 copies of Red Eyes Fang with Chain, and 2 copies of Return of Red Eyes, and 1 Solemn Judgment. The side deck's my standard variant, so let's move on to the extra deck. 1 Archfiend Black Skull Dragon, 1 Meteor Black Comet Dragon. Then we have 2 copies of Dragon of Red Eyes, and 1 copy of Red Eyes Slash Dragon. For synchros, I have 1 Borlode Savage Dragon, 1 Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, and 1 Number 11 Big Eye. For links, I have Bold Sword Dragon, Nightmare Unicorn, Nightmare Phoenix, Cross Sheep, 1 Proud Plant Verte Aracanda, 1 Heroic Steel of Heavenly Spheres, and 1 Link Karibo. And that's it for my Relics deck. And let's move on to the Silent deck. Okay, for the final deck profile that I'm going to show in this video is my Silent deck, which also had to be reworked. Because originally I had Silent Paladin over here, which required the use of Silent Swordsman level 3 and Silent Magician level 4. But I decided to cut those out. Because with those cards, I was just getting beat left, right, and center. So, with all that said, here's my deck profile. I have 3 copies of Silent Magician level 8, and 3 copies of Silent Swordsman level 7. Then we have 3 copies of Goblin D. Berg, and 2 copies of Witch of the Black Forest. Then we have 3 copies of Silent Swordsman, and 3 copies of Silent Magician. Then I have 3 copies of Fortune Fairy Sweet. The reason why I picked this card is because of its ability to draw, reveal, and then special summon, and can help go into my rank 4 place. Then finally, for the monsters, we have Ash Blossom and Winter Cherries. For spells, I have 1 Reinforced Armor, 2 copies of Pot of Extravagance, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Silent Sword Slash, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Silent Burning, and 1 copy of Double or Nothing. For traps, I have 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence, 2 copies of Gravehole, 2 Royal Decree, and 1 Solemn Judgment. My side decks is my standard variant, so let's move on to the extra deck, where I have 1 copy of number 38, Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy. Then we have number 11 Big Eye, 1 Dark Rebellion Siege Dragon, 1 number 39 Utopia, 1 number 41 Babushka the Terribly Tired Tipper, number 101 Silent Honor Arc, 1 Cat Stell the Sky Blaster Musketeer, 1 Exile Knight, and 1 number 39 Utopia Double. For links, I have 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Isolde, 2 Tales of the Noble Knights, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, and 1 Hip Hoshinigan. I think that's how you say it. I could be wrong. Yeah, those are my decks that you can find on YGO Pro decks.com, which I will provide a link to, which you can try these decks out, tinker them how you see fit. If you have any suggestions on how to improve this deck, go to the discussion area of my YouTube channel, and also like this video, share it if you can, and yeah, I guess that's it for now. This is Jam477 signing out, and look forward to my dual video and deck profile videos for 5D's era decks.